amount of legalese which we'll try and interpret on this Novak Djokovic ruling. Looks like he won't be on the order of play for tomorrow at the Australian Open. I think he's run out of appeals. I think he's going to be deported from Australia. We'll look at the implications of that. Now, as well as that, we'll stay with Boris Johnson and his travails. Sir Keir Starmer has said it's time to boot Boris out. The Prime Minister prepares to fire staff to save himself the big dog. Here is the leader of the Labour Party.
We're witnessing every day the broken spectacle of a Prime Minister mired in deceit and deception and unable to lead. I want to look to the future.
All right, well, fine. Well, we'll assess that. But we're trying to work out what's happened with Novak Djokovic. Looks like he's going to be deported. And it looks to me like freedom of speech in Australia may be a thing of the past.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock. Novak Djokovic has lost his appeal after he's been deported from Australia. The men's world tennis number one has had his application dismissed after having his visa cancelled for a second time. The court will now be adjourned for 30 minutes to discuss the outcome. The judge just made this statement.
The orders of the court are: 1. The amended application be dismissed with costs, such costs to be agreed or failing agreement assessed. 2. Reasons to be published at a later date.
It's reported a series of policy announcements, including on the migrant crisis, are said to be imminent to try to deflect attention away from the government's Partygate scandal. The Sunday Times says the Prime Minister is also planning a mass clear-out of Number 10 staff to appease voters and save his position. A man who took 4 people hostage at a synagogue in Texas has died, with those being all held safe and alive. A rabbi and worshippers were among those involved in the city of Colleyville, where a service was being live-streamed online. President Joe Biden has praised police for their courageous work after a standoff that lasted 10 hours. Matt DeSano is a special agent with the FBI.
I'm also extremely proud of the team of negotiators who worked all day long engaging the subject and likely saved the lives of the subjects just through their engagement. It's very likely this situation would have ended very badly early on in the day had we not had professional, consistent negotiation with the subject.
Prince Harry has started legal action against a Home Office decision not to allow him to personally pay for police protection while in the United Kingdom. Harry filed his claim last September, saying it's unreasonable, adding he and his family are unable to return to his home because it's too dangerous. 2 offers for him to pay for security have been dismissed since he and Meghan stepped down from royal duties. LBC weather, sunny spells across Scotland and Northern Ireland this morning, rainy for most of England, a high of 11 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lottie Morley.
Tesco Bank's new payment card, Club Card Pay Plus, gives you the power to make your money go further. You can pay, save and pick up extra points wherever you shop, whether that's the movies with the little monsters, a family meal out, or just the weekly shop. Plus spend at Tesco and get double points for the first 3 months. Club Card Pay Plus provided by Tesco Bank. Apply online now. Every little helps. Minimum spend and exclusions apply when collecting points. Available to Tesco Club Card members age 18 plus. UK residents only, subject to status. This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Andrew Castle.
3 minutes past 7. Good morning to you. Sunday morning, the 16th of January. Boris Johnson, his party's hypocrisy, who he's going to blame, Operation Save Big Dog and all that other nonsense coming up. But breaking news now, just a few minutes ago, the Australian Federal Court has upheld the cancellation of Novak Djokovic's visa. He will now be deported from Australia. And he will not defend his title. He is on the running order, as it were, on the order of play at Rod Laver Arena for his first round match against Miomir Kecmanovic, who happens to be a Serbian player tomorrow. So Djokovic's place in the draw will be taken by someone else. And going forward, Novak Djokovic is going to have a hard time, I would imagine, getting back into Australia as we assess this breaking news for the next 3 years. I think he's going to have to prove that it's in the country's interest to let him in, otherwise he's not going to get a visa. Going to the United States to play some big tournaments at the start of the year, in fact, and throughout the rest of his career, may be difficult. After you've been deported, explaining all that on a form is going to take something. Now, it seems to me that the judgment, this wasn't deciding the merits of the case. It was the legality, and a judge in an impenetrable legalese, I think, was saying exactly that. This was about the legality, not the rights and wrongs, or the morality, the legality of what the immigration minister Alex Hawke had done, which was to revoke his visa for a second time and kicking this man Novak Djokovic out of the country, and it has been deemed legal to do so. For me, as if I may offer an opinion, I'm quite shocked, because I think what's been happening here for quite some time is that we don't like your attitude. And we're going to build a case around the fact that we don't like your attitude, and therefore, even though you may be wrong and an idiot, and we don't like your attitude, you're not going to be able to tell us what that attitude is. We're going to kick you out. We're not going to listen to you because your attitude and your opinions don't match up with government thinking. That, for me, was what was at stake with this judgment and with the way he's been treated. Can you honestly tell me that if 83% of the public in Australia had wanted him to stay, he would have been kicked out? There's no way. So I think there's been a vast amount of theatrics about this, and it'll be a very popular move, and I understand Australian sentiment on that completely. But I think this is quite a sinister judgment, and so I declare that now. But I'm not surprised this has happened. Did he have the right to do this, Mr. Hawke? Absolutely. They control their own borders, and we're judged from a distance, fair dues, but I think that's amazing. That Djokovic could inspire anti-vax sentiment, and that there could be civil unrest. Well, what now? Because I guarantee you there'll be people on the streets of Australia pretty unhappy with this if they're really thinking further ahead than just now. Anyway, there we are. That's what I think. What do you think? 0345 6060 973. Do you consider freedom of speech a thing of the past in Australia? It's been going on like this for quite some time down there. Simon Love is a state political correspondent for 10 News First in Melbourne. Breaking news, Simon. Good morning to you. This will please the Australian public, but it bothers me. Where do you stand?
Where do I stand? Well, I tend to agree with some of your points, not entirely all of them. I think this has been an embarrassing saga for all parties, not just Novak Djokovic, but the Australian government and the Australian people. No one wants to see their own country in a bad light, so I don't think it's a good saga. But I think, ultimately, I think the right thing has happened. I think a decision has occurred, and I think that it is good that has happened prior to the Australian Open getting underway tomorrow, so it gives the tournament a bit of an opportunity to refocus and rejig and be ready to.
I don't know, mate. As if this story is going away. Was he treated the same as others? Has there been consistency?
No, I don't think so, and I don't think it's a good precedent to set where someone can come into the country and basically be able to get emergency court hearings, especially over a weekend, just like that. I think you just only have to have a look at the 30-odd asylum seekers that are in the same detention hotel that Novak Djokovic spent time with, and so that'll certainly raise questions on,
I was referring also, Simon, great point. I was also referring to Renata Vorakova, the Czech player, and the unnamed tennis official, who were on the same exemption as originally Novak Djokovic tried to get into the country on. They were allowed in the country, then rounded up and deported. So he wasn't treated the same as them for a start because of that tweet and the amount of attention onto him. Again, I think
no, I certainly don't. I don't think so. No, I agree with you on that point. I don't think what happened to Renata Borikova was quite fair, given that she was essentially allowed into the country and then deported after the fact, whereas Novak Djokovic was ultimately stopped order by way of his high-profile nature, and the case sort of went on from there. But when you look at, as you said, the broad powers of the Australian Immigration Minister do allow him to make a decision with, not the same level of scrutiny that, say, the Home Affairs Minister had to make last week. So he's got very broad powers under the Migration Act to essentially kick someone out of the country. And they were able to mount this argument that he would stoke anti-vax sentiment, and his mere presence would stoke those sorts of concerns. And ultimately, it was up to Djokovic's legal team to prove against, against the minister's
Well, they argue that if the government identified Djokovic, I can't even know his name, I'm commentating now, Djokovic, as an anti-vax threat, then surely they'd recognise that his deportation would also spark anger from the community, and that would threaten peace and stability.
Yes, I think it's a flip side argument there that you bring up, Andrew. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I think, it'll obviously, as much as I was saying before, the Australian Open will be keen for some clear air. This story and the fallout from it will ripple for many, many, many days to come.
Yeah.
Particularly the response, I think, in Belgrade is going to be really interesting to watch.
Thank you very much indeed for your time and for contributing to this story at other times as well. Simon Love, State Political Correspondent for 10 News First in Melbourne. This is LBC, Andrew Castle, 7:10 Sunday morning. Novak Djokovic has lost a judicial review of the decision to have his Australian visa quashed, meaning he will not compete at the Australian Open. He was scheduled to play a first-round match, I believe, tomorrow night on Rod Laver Arena. He faces being banned from the country for 3 years. That is breaking news. Oliver Brown is the chief sports writer at The Telegraph, who joins us from Melbourne. Oliver, you've been following this story extremely closely. Perhaps you're surprised by this, perhaps not. For me, it feels quite a sinister decision and bothers me very, very much. But, I'm not a supporter of his stance on vaccination, but I don't think that was what was at stake here. What's your take?
No, I tend to agree with you, Andrew. The verdict got handed down a few minutes ago, and Chief Justice Alsop was pretty clear in saying that basically the court had no authority to overturn the immigration minister's decision on Djokovic's visa, which kind of begged the question of what we'd really been doing for the past 8 hours. This second appeal by Djokovic looks really doomed to fail. So I'm not too surprised by the verdict, but what I am perturbed by is that I don't think the immigration minister remotely proved his case. Certainly the lawyer didn't on his behalf. Essentially, this all came down to the notion that Djokovic, by his very presence in Melbourne, was going to inflame anti-vax sentiment. And I believe that's so far from being proven. You couldn't imagine a more pro-vax city than Melbourne, or a more pro-vax country than Australia. The entire land is more than 90% vaccinated. There are millions of boosters being administered. The notion that Djokovic, until the Australian government made him a martyr, essentially, for his Serbian supporters, the notion that he would change the vaccine take-up habits of the Australian people, I just think is preposterous.
Well, and also the possibility that he's a health threat in any way in a country which is so heavily infected with Omicron at the moment, which is sad, but hopefully passes without too many hospitalizations and death. I mean, it should be stated, I'm coming in for quite some criticism here on texts and such. Some people are saying that if Djokovic hadn't lied on his immigration form, then fine. This is nothing to do with the erosion of free speech in Australia. It should be stated, Oliver, that the government wasn't using that error on his declaration in this legal argument. It was nothing to do with this.
No, the immigration minister said in his written reasons that that false declaration had no bearing on his decision whatsoever. So for all that it stoked enormous public outrage, it was ultimately immaterial. Everything hinged on being able to show that Djokovic was a lightning rod for anti-vaxxers. And having listened to every minute of the lawyer law submissions today, I just did not hear any concrete evidence to support that. And so I think now the spectacle of his public deportation is a pretty grim affair.
Well, implications for Novak before I let you go, Oliver. He's going to leave the country. This only broke about 15 minutes ago. Do we know what will happen with Novak Djokovic next? I suppose, what is it, whisked to the airport?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I imagine it will be quite a swift process. When he was released from detention earlier in the week, it took place in just 30 minutes. I mean, Djokovic had no legal right to be in the country now, and he is flanked by several Australian border force officials who I imagine will be whisking into the airport very quickly.
Wow. Oliver, thank you very much indeed, and I've enjoyed your work in the Telegraph, chief sports writer at the Telegraph, who joining us from from Melbourne, Australia. Novak Djokovic, the news this morning breaking 15-20 minutes ago. He's out. He's been deported. So this court has taken a view of what Alex Hawke, the immigration minister, had said about him being a lightning rod, Djokovic, for anti-vax sentiment. It could stir up civil unrest. I think quite draconian, I think quite dystopian, I think quite Orwellian, this decision. I also think it's extremely popular with elections 4 or 5 weeks away, and I'm going to reply directly to Stephen, who says, I'm an intelligent guy, that's me, but you're so far off the mark with your support of no-vax. Stephen's on the Isle of Dogs. Well, Stephen, it's not about supporting his stance on vaccination, which I don't. Okay, this is it, right? Before we go to the news, I think Novak Djokovic's stance is wrong on vaccination. I think he's been cavalier. I think the tweet that he sent was smug and drew attention to him. I think that was all a mistake. I'm not thinking of him as a tennis player or as a superstar in any way. I disagree with the running of the Adria Tour, which he ran last year, where a lot of tennis players got COVID. I believe he might have done as well. I have no idea whether his PCR test on December the 16th was the right was correct. None of that was not at play in this legal challenge. It was only the legality of the move by the immigration minister Alex Hawke that was being looked at, not the morality or the wisdom of Alex Hawke stepping into this argument as an immigration minister and kicking somebody out. It's got nothing to do with it. My concern is quite simply this, that we all have a right, and we prove it every day, including me. We have a right to be stupid. We have a right to be wrong. We have a right to be offensive to a degree. We have a right to just get stuff wrong. And I think that has been trampled on here. A lightning rod for anti-vax sentiment, and you're not allowed to be somebody that is a vaccine skeptic. You're not allowed anymore. That's the worry for me. It's over to you after the news from Lottie Morning.
The men's world tennis number one Novak Djokovic faces being deported after losing a judicial review against the cancellation of his visa. The Sunday Times says Boris Johnson is planning a mass clear-out of number 10 staff to save his own position. A group of hostages have been released after being held in a synagogue in Texas in a standoff with police. LBC weather, sunny spells for Scotland and Northern Ireland, rainy for most of England, a high of 11 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Claire Sharp. The M4 closed this weekend both ways between the M25 and Junction 3 for Hayes. That's causing delays to build up already. The North Circular busy in Park Royal on the southbound side approaching the Hanger Lane Gyratory. 2 lanes are closed because of an accident. It's also heavy in Cricklewood on the northbound side approaching the Brent Cross flyover because of an accident. The exit slip road is partially blocked. On the Tube, Central Line has severe delays and the Bank branch of the Northern Line is closed between Moorgate and Kennington from today until mid-May.
Swarbrick on Sunday, coming up at 10, live from Westminster, LBC.
See it, touch it, drive it, love it at Car Giant. Winter sale now on.
is yours. It's our iconic taste, plant-based. For information about McPlant, visit mcdonalds.co.uk/McPlant. Served after 11 a.m, subject to availability.
Mums, dads,
Annoying brothers.
and sisters. May we present to you, drumroll please, the Food Scanner app. Just scan your favourite foods with your phone.
And swipe to see loads of healthier choices for your next shop.
Magic!
Like sugary yogurts for healthier ones, or cake bars to yummy malt loaf.
Download the free NHS Food Scanner app and find healthier swaps for your family. Just scan, swipe, swap. Better health. Let's do this.
Rainforests, reefs, and markets in the streets. See the real Caribbean. Book something to look forward to in the British Airways sale and experience the untouched island of Tobago. Flights plus 7 nights hotel from $549 per person. Book by January 25th at ba.com/Tobago. Fly British Airways. Book now and change later with flexible booking options. Terms and conditions apply. Sail ends January 25th. Limited availability. Selected holidays in September 2022. Atoll protected.
Andrew Castle on LBC.
It's 7:20. Lenny's in Ashford. Novak Djokovic is on his way home. Lenny, what do you say?
Great.
Okay. It's quite...
It's great that there's one country in the world with no double standards.
Right. What about his... What, you do realise that even if he was unvaccinated, there was a medical exemption that you can get into Australia with. That's not his fault.
Well, what I understand in what you just said about all the rights,
Yep.
no one has the right to break a country's laws. And their laws was that they don't make anyone really welcome unless you're vaccinated.
Lenny, what law did he... The grounds for the case that he just lost, and the immigration minister and the Australian government have just won, was that he might inspire anti-vax sentiment and cause civil unrest.
Well, if they've interpreted it that way, they have a right to do that. And
But he hasn't broken... But that's not breaking a law.
Well, yes, he has. But all he's got is a load of slippery lawyers that stuck that
Lenny, come on. You got it. This is serious. Like 25 minutes ago this came in. We've spoken before, Lenny, and I don't want to fall out with you, but what law has he broken?
Well,
that was subject to this court case.
The law was that people that are not vaccinated are not welcome into
That's not a law. He was allowed in under a medical exemption, or people were. That was not something that this court was looking at.
Well, I look at it myself. You have your right to look at it from your point of view.
You're saying he's something, and I'm just saying it's not right, that's all.
Well, I disagree with you.
He's not breaking a law. He hasn't broken a law.
We have to agree to differ because Australia does not allow anybody, make anyone welcome unless they're vaccinated. And all he is, he's only a tennis player, he's no one special, and so he's got to get off of his pedestal and abide by the law.
And if he did abide by the law and the government decided that they just don't like him and got rid of him, that's okay with you?
That's not a reasonable comment, what you've just said.
Well, they've just deported him and he hasn't broken a law.
Yes, he's tried to enter Australia unvaccinated. That's the law.
No, you can get into Australia with a medical exemption, which is what he had.
Well,
That's not at